Support everything we do at MWP News by visiting ko-fi.com/MWP News. Every donation helps us stay independent. For breaking entertainment news, reviews, and more, check out MWPnews.com. If you love games, head over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@MWPNewsGaming for reviews and gameplay. Links for all of this will be in the show notes, as well as links to the other podcasts. Thank you for your continued support. Good morning and welcome to Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. I am Adam. It is October 17th that I'm recording this. In the future it'll be on Thursdays, but I forgot. Because it's one of those things where, like, over the course of September I was like, do I have to start this now? Do I have to start this now? And then I got to October and I was like, fuck, I have to start that now. And then I looked at my calendar and I was like, fuck, I forgot to start that. And so here we are. Going forward, this will be on Thursday mornings. But what we're here for is this week, if we start watching The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, where it's like 1, 2, Book of Boba Fett 3, we will be exactly where, we need to be, because that number of weeks is how long it is until The Mandalorian and Grogu comes out. So if you want to refresh, you can watch one episode a week. Boom, done, perfect. And that's kind of, why we're doing this, because we are that many weeks out from this major release, and we're going to, rewatch this show as we get to, to refresh ourselves, because I don't remember a lot of The Mandalorian, and I have memory hold a good amount of the Book of Boba Fett, because that show was not great. But fundamentally, where the fuck are those sirens? I have no idea. Alright, whatever. So, the point I'm saying here is that the original run of The Mandalorian began in 2019. This is pre-pandemic, because the show came out and started before The Rise of Skywalker, because as we'll get to, the episode that comes out the week The Rise of Skywalker happens is the one where they introduce Grogu having the ability to Force heal, which is important because this ends up coming back in The Rise of Skywalker because Rey can do it. Now, I don't know that was one of those things where it's like, well, we can release that here and that, that'll introduce it, and then we can, because that feels A, short-sighted, B, weird, and C, outside of everything we know about the development of both The Mandalorian and The Rise of Skywalker. They wouldn't have been developed in tandem for one small reference. But all of that said, where we are with this show is that rewatching the first episode, and I could be wrong, I seem to recall episodes 1 and 2 maybe dropped the same day, and then they did weekly from there. But episode 1 dropped, and I don't recall all of this happening in one episode from the way I remember it. And that doesn't mean that I'm infallible, and that, like, obviously, because I thought this happened over 2 episodes. But in a way, this first episode kind of sets the stage for everything that's going to come after. And I know that that's obvious for the pilot's going to set the stage for everything that comes after. That's kind of an obvious statement. That's the point of the pilot. But I'm just saying in terms of, like, what every episode of the show kind of is. The Mandalorian will get an assignment. He will go out on said assignment, or he'll be on his own mission, and he will go to a planet. He will find some people. He will make a new friend. And then he will move on to the next planet. This is a combination of the Man in Black who comes to town and the, the point where, it was multiple weeks. And we'll get to that in 2 weeks. And then it's also, Lone Wolf and Cub. It's this guy, the lone warrior, who finds who takes the kid under his wing, and he's got to take care of this kid, and he's got to, that's what this is. And to an extent, I think that both of those things in this show kind of work. It's a little, I think we give this show a lot of credit, and maybe it was just we were coming off back-to-back Star Wars slumps. And then also, like, Disney hadn't done anything big budget within one of their franchises for Disney Plus. So I think there was maybe an assumption from a lot of people that, like, it's a TV show, it's not going to be as good. Because, like, I know me, at least. Like, this is 2019, we are still at the height of the Arrowverse. This show would have debuted at the beginning of the season where they were starting Crisis. And I'm like, okay, well, these are big budget for network TV. And it's like, is this budget going to carry over, when Disney does something big budget with a major IP, is it going to look like that? Because, like, yeah, I liked, The Flash, and I watched The Flash on a weekly basis for the better part of 9 years, or the better part of a decade, rather. And watching that, was kind of that made me not apprehensive, but kind of like, oh, well, is this going to look like that? Because, like, the effects aren't great on that show. Like, they're passable for the fact that this is a network TV show, but it is, again, network TV being done on like, The Flash being done on network TV, or Superman being done, or Supergirl being done on network TV, it doesn't always look great. The same goes for, like, Legends of Tomorrow. And that is kind of the big issue, like, the big thing with this. I think The Mandalorian is well received with the benefit of its time. But looking at it now, I think as we move through this show, we're not going to be as positive on it. And I think that's kind of the thing, because it's like, okay, well, this episode is he captures the guy. And by the way, anyone who was bitching about the spaceship, what's it called, what's his name ship being named, or Boba Fett's ship being renamed from Slave 1 to what's it called, like the Fireburst or the Fire Spray or something like that, because it's the class of ship it is. It's like, one of the things I realized this morning while I was getting ready to do this, and I was trying to locate my coat, because for some reason it's in the low 50s today. Well, I mean, it's October, so that fits. But, like, as I was doing all that, I was like, with the exception of the Millennium Falcon, no other ship in Star Wars really has a name. Like, the Millennium Falcon, it's a Corellian freighter, like it, but it's called the Millennium Falcon. Besides that, everything else is just whatever class ship it is. Like, okay, so, like, because that's what the thing is. The guy says, the guy he captures, the blue alien dude, is, he goes in and he, and he's like, oh wow, it's a Razor Crest, it's retro, it's like, I like the throwback look to it, and it's like, or something like that. That's not the exact line, but that's basically the gist of what he says. And it's like, oh, so the Razor Crest is the ship type, not the name. It's not like he looked at the name of the ship on the outside and he's like, oh, okay, well, this is the Razor Crest, a model of whatever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, and again, they don't call it the Slave One in any of the movies. Like, the only ship that in any of the movies or the shows or anything that gets named is the Millennium Falcon, and okay, whatever. We're not going to get into this again. So, all of that said, as I'm watching this show, I think the other thing we take into consideration is the context around Star Wars discourse at the time this show premiered. This was in the lead-up to The Rise of Skywalker. This would have been, I believe it was October, so around this same time, this show launched. Maybe, I think it was like October 22nd or something. Like, that name, that date kind of sticks in my head for some reason. But that is, that's when the show premiered. We were coming off Solo, we were coming off The Last Jedi, and in a few weeks, we were going to be getting We were going to be getting the Rise of Skywalker. Now, Solo can at best be said it is a movie. It's not bad, but it's not great. It's nothing. It's the epitome of like, well, it's a movie, and if you sit in the theater and watch it, you will have watched a movie. It's fine. It's not a great Star Wars movie, but it's serviceable, and it's like, it kind of has that same energy of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, the Rankin and Bass special from the 60s with, was it Fred Astaire as the mailman? Where it's like, as he goes through as he goes through the story of Santa Claus, there's like this little kid there. Oh, so that's where the reindeer came from. Oh, so that's why he wears the red coat. Oh, so that's why he comes down the chimney. And it's like, that's the only thing that was missing from that movie, because like, as they go through, it's like everything. Oh, so that's why he's called Han Solo. Oh, so that's why, for whatever reason, Lando calls him Han instead of Han, and it's not just a quirk that Billy D. Williams decided to do. Like, oh, that's why he decided, he said that he could do the run in a unit of distance, not a unit of measure, a unit of time. And it's like, okay. It's like, or, Lucas just didn't know that. He heard parsec, and he's like, oh, that sounds like a futuristic version of second. Like, and that's, it is what it is. And that's exactly what that movie is. And it came out in late May, it had bombed, and then you have this. And the other thing is, too, about this show in its premiere, is there are no women in this premiere. And that goes into the second episode, too. There are no women even into the second episode. And the Star Wars movies that had come out had been fairly women-heavy, with the exception of Solo. But, I mean, Solo had the droid, that was the droid liberation droid from, who was voiced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And then you had, is that her name? The one from Fleabag, who was in Indiana Jones. You had her. You had, was Thandie Newton in the entire movie, or did she get killed off early? The Enfys Nest was a girl. So, like, yeah, there are a lot of women. And then, of course, it's like you go through the other ones. It's like, Rey is ostensibly the lead. The only white guy in that movie who doesn't get killed off in the first movie is Kylo Ren, and he's the bad guy. And then you go through, the other movies, and you're like, it's all women. And that was something that the manosphere of nerddom had latched onto. And it's like, the Force is female, which again was not about Star Wars. It was a military recruitment thing, and again, something that gets lost in the weeds on that. It was just like Kathleen Kennedy took a picture for this military recruitment thing, and it was the Force is female, and it had nothing to do with Star Wars at all. It's just Kathleen Kennedy was the one there. Kathleen Kennedy around this time became the face of like, this is why this sucks, because it's a woman in charge. And that was kind of this whole situation leads to this point where this show debuts, where you have a guy who doesn't talk much and solves all of his problems with shooting. And it's like, okay, that is why this show got, a lot of attention. And this is kind of the point, looking back now, and as I'm saying it out loud, I'm kind of reaching this conclusion. This is kind of the point where we should have realized that this group of influencers had a huge amount of power. Because here's the thing about this. The whole thing comes down to what's I'm looking for here. The whole thing comes down to, this is a thing that we're going to talk up. This is a thing that we're going to say is great, and we're going to give it a lot of attention. And to that end, this ends up dictating the next 6 years, like the end of 2019, or rather the entirety of 2019. Ends up dictating how Lucasfilm is going to carry themselves for the rest of for the next 6 years, 7 years. Because by the time we have next year, it's like the next movie is The Mandalorian and Grogu. And it's one of the things where it's like, this got talked up to death. And we got our first taste of like, oh, well, is it going woke? because they introduced Cara Dune. And that was the thing that was like, oh, well, then it turned out Cara Dune was a Republican, or Gina Carano was a Republican, so we have to change what we're saying about her. And all of a sudden, it's great that she's getting her own show and all of that. But it's like, before that, it was like, oh, it's starting to get woke. The women are starting to be able to talk. Like, that's kind of what this entire thing was. And it's like, the whole thing comes down to, they realized they have power to wield. And what they figured was that they could use this to influence. And what ended up happening was, this is a thing that lended a lot of credibility to these influencers. And all it was blind sexism and racism. Where it's like, who are the people who are on the front lines of the conversation of what was being done in The Mandalorian at the time? And the entire group that's doing it's Jon Favreau. He's on the front. It's Dave Filoni, who's also on the front of this. And then it's, who's the other big? And then, it's a guy in the lead. You have Grief Karga, who's a guy. You have, I don't think there's a woman in this episode who has a line. So this show comes out, and it is the dream for these people. And that is exactly where the show kind of occupies this weird space. So now, as this show goes on, and as it starts to lean away from being the wet dream of the guys who play with their Luke Skywalker toys as a kid and didn't understand what the movie was actually about, it is something that they start to pull away from. And that's why you see, like, oh, well, they didn't like Book of Boba Fett, which I would assume had nothing to do with the fact that the show sucked. I would assume had more to do with the fact that, like, it starts out kind of Dances with Wolves. Oh, Ahsoka gets her own episode, and we're going to introduce Ahsoka. And that's the thing, too, is that it's like, this is also the time where we get to launder the image of this group, because I don't think anyone has had as successful image laundering in the fan community space as the Star Wars fans. Like, Star Wars fans have successfully made it look like they were never the people they always have been. Oh, we didn't, almost push Ahmad Best to suicide. That wasn't us. It was. That's exactly what you did. You were so vehemently opposed that the children's movie had a character for children in it that you bullied and harassed the guy who played the character for literally, like, the better part of a decade. Oh, we didn't hate Ahsoka. Yes, you did. You despised Ahsoka. Ahsoka was one of the most hated characters from the time of her introduction all the way through to when she shows up in, all the way through when she shows up in, what was that, the other thing that she's in? The Clone Wars and Rebels. And it's like, yeah, she eventually grew on people, but that's only because there was a new woman to hate, and this one was real and not CGI. Oh, okay, so this entire thing is because one of the lanes is closed, and people don't. Oh, okay, well, that's how that works. It's not, you go all the way to the end, and this is why there's traffic. Assholes. So all of that said, the issue with this is, this is the point where the show should have been raising red flags, and it is. I will concede, I didn't catch this until watching this again. Like, this is not something that I caught when I was watching it initially. Because it's kind of one of those things that, like, it's happening in real time. You can't really handle, let's talk about the show, let's talk about what's going on, in the world around the show, and let's see what's happening. Like, that's kind of the big, why would you do it now, not in the middle of the night? Like, during rush hour. You're mowing the lawn and closing one of 2 lanes on a highway. But like the big issue that you end up with here is that The Mandalorian should be looked back on as a show that was kind of a incitement point for Marvel. It was kind of the thing that or not Marvel, for Star Wars. It was kind of the thing that told Disney that we could get positive response if we issue what we've been doing for the better part of a decade. And I think that the question that remains is, does that work? Does that really work? And I would say the answer is probably no. Like, I haven't looked at The Mandalorian's ratings to be able to see like how well it did and how well it did compared to like WandaVision or, you know, the Book of or the not even Book of Fett, but like Andor or something like that. And also, granted, we can't really look at, you know, this show as this season as a bellwether of how well the show is going to do in the future. It is season 1. Season 1 is always going to have the highest viewership. It's always going to be the thing that is going to grab the most people. Shows don't tend to add viewers as the show goes on. The longer a show goes on, the more viewers they lose. It's actually kind of, you know, the peak of viewership is always going to be the beginning of the show, and then each season is kind of the same. You start out strong on the first episode of the season, and then it slowly dwindles from there as people give up on the show or decide, oh, I'll watch this later, and then just forget to do it, which, if you've listened to Beware of Spoilers, you've seen me do that a few times. But this is a show that we need to look back on and kind of give it a role in where we are and be like, this show has done a ton of damage to the Star Wars fan community, and I think that is something that we can't just ignore. We can't just pretend that everything is normal and everything is fine, and this show is, you know, is something that did, you know, what's going on for here? Like it's, you know, it was just good. It's fine. I'm not saying it's bad. There's nothing about the episode that's bad or anything like that. And I do like some of the world building stuff, like the idea that, like, hey, look, the New Republic is here. It's been like 5 years since the Empire fell, and there's confusion about what's being done. Like, Imperial credits aren't being taken some places. They have Mon Cal credits. Those are being taken some places, and there are Republic credits, and it's just the currency is all over the place. The Empire is still in places, but not quite gone. And it's just one of those things where it's like, realistically, there's a chance that this thing that was given rise by this far-right aspect of the internet is, oddly enough, mirroring where we are right now. Where it's like, yeah, Andor is about the beginning of the fight against fascism, but, like, this is about how fascism can be given rise if not handled properly. Like, because that's what this whole thing is. It's like they don't... the Empire is defeated, and a new provisional government needs to be set up, but they don't actually wipe out the entire Empire, and that's the mistake they make. And because the Empire is still around and still able to do that and just, you know, wants to debate peacefully and is just like, why don't you defeat me in the marketplace of ideas, you know, it's just like, you know, and if you try to ban them, you know, from Star Wars Twitter, they're like, you know, hey, you can't do that because we have free speech here. That is kind of exactly where we are right now. Like, it's how does this happen? How do we get to the First Order? Well, look around us. Like, oh, well, the Empire was terrible, but the rebellion got rid of them. But they didn't fix everything that the Empire did immediately, you know, because they did years and years and years and years of damage, but, you know, they didn't fix it immediately, so let's put the Empire back. Like, that's just where we are right now. And I think that that's kind of a funny little side bit of this. And that's exactly, I think that's a good place to leave off for today with this discussion. We'll be back next week with episode 2, where we talk about now he has Grogu in his possession, although at this point he's just called a child. We now know he's Grogu, but he has rescued the baby. And, and again, it's like, this episode, I think, did so well, and it did so well to sell to this specific fan base because of how much it leans into things that this specific fan base wants. It's like, oh, that cool IG droid that was in, that was in Empire Strikes Back. Let's create another one, and he is going to, and he's going to, be really cool, and we're going to see what that robot looks like in action. Oh, we have a guy who looks like Boba Fett. That's cool. Oh, we're going to drop some Mandalorian lore. Cool. That's going to get certain people in. And that's exactly what this show kind of does. But it seems very tailored to a subset of the fan base. And again, as we get through, it gets even worse. Because I would say by the time we reach season 2 in the finale, which, we will eventually get to it, but the idea that Luke Skywalker is going to show up and just tear through these droids, it's like, again, we are looking at, this was vindication for a good amount of the fan base, and it was something that I looked at and I'm like, this is weird. Where it's like, he was putting it like side by side with like the Maul hallway in the Clone Wars and the Vader hallway in in Rogue One, and it's like, okay, cool. It's cool that they look similar, but like, you do realize Maul's a bad guy, right? And you do realize that Vader's a bad guy. Like, these are not people that you're supposed to be rooting for. Like, this is not, like, Maul you're okay with, because Maul is something where it's, he's there to, he's trying to get off this ship with Ahsoka because the Empire is forming, and he's like, oh shit, the Empire is forming. Darth Sidious told me about this several hundred times, and it's actually happening now. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so let's just, to the point where when it came out, I said, like, is this going to end up not really being Luke? Like, a lot of the things at the time, I even said, I was like, I think I even called him Luke. Like, the idea that, like, there's a lot of these little things that are being hinted at where it's like, is the point of this going to end up being that Luke, this is the clone? A lot of this is hinting towards heir to the Empire. So is that what this is? This is the clone of Luke, and that was created by the Emperor. And it seems that's not the case. That was just Luke. And it's like, it's just kind of a little bit strange. But whatever, it is what it is. And again, that was another thing that lended credibility to this, where it's like, this was not the Luke Skywalker that we saw in The Last Jedi. Arguably, the Luke Skywalker that we see in The Last Jedi is the Jedi Grand Master that would have trained under Yoda, and makes the most sense, because he is someone who would, like, Yoda's teachings are that the Force is not a weapon for attack, it's not about lifting rocks, it's not about doing all of that. So the idea that the Resistance wins the day there and escapes because of Luke doing, facing down the Empire in the most non-aggressive, passive way possible. Namely, he is a hologram and he doesn't throw a punch. Like, that is something that, makes sense for a character that was trained by Yoda, as well as when he does something bad and things don't go his way, he fucks off to another planet to hide. Like, all of that kind of tracks for someone who was trained by Yoda. It's that kind of thing where it's like, the people who were upset about that, and were upset about Hermit Luke and all of that, felt vindicated by, here's Luke coming in, fucking up all the Dark Troopers. And that's why this show occupies such a bad space, I think. And we're gonna talk about it more as we go along. But we'll wrap up there for today, and until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.